A new poll out of Georgia shows Senator Perdue in a tight runoff race. A new Survey USA poll shows Democratic challenger Jon Ossoff with a 2-point edge over Perdue. That's within the margin of error. But the state's other Senate runoff has a larger gap between the candidates, with Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler behind Democrat Raphael Warnock by 7 percentage points. Activists across the political spectrum are launching major voter mobilization efforts ahead of those January runoffs. A look at election data shows Asian Americans emerging as a powerful force in the state. They turned out in record numbers for November's election, helping deliver a victory to President-elect Joe Biden. Now Democrats hope a repeat of that momentum could help flip control of the Senate. Voters who trace their roots to Asia or the Pacific Islands, or AAPI voters, are the fastest growing voting bloc in the state. An analysis by the Democratic firm TargetSmart found a 91% increase in turnout from 2016. Stephanie Cho is the Executive Director for Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta and joins me now. Stephanie, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us. So when you look at the numbers here, it's interesting because only 4% of Georgia's population are AAPI voters. Why are they such a political force?
I think that they were not considered a force before because we weren't even in the polls, and that turnout doesn't just happen overnight for AAPIs, just like Black voters, Latinx, and immigrant voters. But it's really a direct result of the work in the communities that we serve.
And, you know, you talk about overlooked in the past. I mean, we should point out that no voting group is a monolith. And in particular, when you talk about AAPI voters, that's really the case. I have looked into this for CBS News and done reporting on this leading up to the election. But I wonder what your thoughts are, Stephanie, on why you think AAPI voters have been overlooked in the past, and you think that's now changing.
I think it's changing now because for local folks here in Georgia, I do think that there was always a concentrated effort, particularly in areas like Gwinnett and Fulton. So local candidates were outreaching to Asian American voters. Our organization has always looked at Asian American voters, but you have to do a concentrated effort, which means provide things in multiple different languages, meaning to outreach and to talk about issues that really impact and affect the Asian American community. And I think now with issues of COVID, issues of the president saying things about that it's called the China virus, the Wuhan flu, has really impacted how people are looking at, particularly Asian Americans, looking at the races coming up, and then also how it affected the general. And so you also have all these new Asian American voters too. It's like over 30,000 new AAPIs voted in Georgia in the general, which is huge, right? And that doesn't happen overnight. And so it's that concentrated effort of talking to folks year round, talking to them about the issues that really matter to them, and getting the right education and the right information in multiple different languages.
And how do you think that the president's rhetoric might actually impact AAPI voter engagement here when it comes to these Senate races? Because it's one thing in the general, obviously, with the Senate runoff races on January 5th, it's a completely different environment, some would say.
It's a different environment in the sense that most runoffs would not have this much attention, and most runoffs, you would look at high propensity voters. But for us as an organization, we always talk to every voter. So we treat every voter the same, even if it's in a runoff. And so that's how we look at it. And what we learned in the general also is that everyone wants to vote early or wants to vote by mail. So we want to make sure that we get that education in language earlier as possible. And I think the trickle down that I'm seeing is that Kelly Loeffler and also David Perdue have also made comments towards the Asian American community. One is that Kelly Loeffler claimed that in October, China must be held accountable after it gave the virus to Donald Trump and Melania Trump. Also in October, Senator David Perdue mocked the pronunciation of Kamala Harris's name, which is a racist dig that many Asian Americans have faced over the years with our names. And so when we think about that as Asian Americans, we won't forget that when we go to the polls.
I wonder how much you think those are animating issues that get voters out. I wonder if there's sort of a generational divide, as there is in other voting groups when it comes to that issue. What are some of, more broadly, the other issues that resonate with this specific group of voters?
I think Asian Americans have always cared about healthcare. And I would say COVID has really increased that. So if you're looking at your home country and how it's dealing with the COVID crisis versus how the US is handling it, that's one piece. The other piece on the healthcare is that Asian Americans across the board are overrepresented in healthcare. So that is deeply impacting people's decisions. The environment is an issue that younger Asian Americans are more interested in. You're looking at small business grants, small business incentives. Those are also things that widely Asian Americans are concerned about.
And just one last one for you, Stephanie. I mean, what are you seeing with respect to specific outreach from these Senate candidates when it comes to AAPI voters?
I think this is just starting, where people are actually widely outreaching to the Asian American community. And so for myself, I haven't gotten anything from any party yet. So I'm waiting to get something. So that's something to note. And then I would say that in the general, I did get stuff from both candidates. But for this election so far, I haven't gotten anything. And I'm a super voter. I vote in every election, municipal or general or runoff. And so I'm waiting to get my information. And so that's why it's so important for organizations like ours to get out the word, give accurate information in multiple different languages, because we care very much about this electorate, and we would like to see more and more people go out and exercise their right to vote.
Well, when you look at the numbers, though, again, just a reminder that Democratic firm TargetSmart found a 91% increase in turnout from 2016. 91% increase. Pretty remarkable. All right, Stephanie Cho, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.